300 years ago, Earth sent out its biggest and most important ship into deep space. The ship was called the ECS Horizon, and it carried 5,000 people who wanted to start a new life on a distant planet. Captain Daniel Foster was in charge of the ship. He was a calm and smart man who always made good decisions. Next to him was Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan, a brilliant woman who understood the ship's powerful engines better than anyone else in the galaxy. The mission seemed simple enough. The Horizon would travel far beyond any place humans had ever been before. They would find new worlds, build new homes, and prove that humanity could survive anywhere in the universe. The ship had everything they needed: food supplies for years, medical equipment, construction tools, and most importantly, an experimental jump drive that could move them across space faster than anyone thought possible. For the first 6 months, everything went perfectly. The crew was happy and excited. Families played together in the recreation areas. Scientists studied the stars they passed. Engineers kept all the systems running smoothly. Captain Daniel Foster walked through the halls every day, talking to people, making sure everyone felt safe and confident about their future. Then one day, during a routine jump between star systems, something went terribly wrong. Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan was monitoring the jump drive when all her screens started showing strange readings. The numbers did not make sense. The energy levels were climbing higher and higher, way beyond what should have been possible. She called out to the captain, but before anyone could do anything, a bright white light filled every part of the ship. When the light faded, the Horizon was gone, completely vanished. No explosion, no debris floating in space, no emergency signal calling for help. The ship and all 5,000 people on board simply disappeared as if they had never existed at all. Back on Earth, people waited for news. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. Search parties looked everywhere, but they found nothing. Families cried for their lost loved ones. The government held memorial services. Scientists argued about what might have happened, but nobody really knew. Eventually, everyone accepted the sad truth. The Horizon was lost forever, and those 5,000 brave people were dead. Over the next 300 years, humanity moved on. Earth built more ships, but they were slower and safer. No more experimental jump drives. No more big risks. They established 37 colony worlds using careful, proven technology. Humans spread across their corner of the galaxy, always remembering the Horizon as a warning about what happens when you push too far, too fast. The galaxy changed a lot during those 300 years. 4 massive empires grew powerful and took control of most of known space. The Caltharian sovereignty was made up of tall beings whose bodies looked like they were made of crystal. They were rich and controlled most of the trade in the galaxy. If you wanted to buy or sell anything important, you had to deal with the Caltharians. The Viren hegemony was different. They were reptilian warriors who loved fighting and conquest. They believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. Their soldiers were fierce, and their warships were feared throughout the galaxy. They ruled over hundreds of worlds through military might and strict discipline. The Nexari Collective was perhaps the strangest of all the empires. They were not really individuals at all. Instead, billions of beings shared one mind, thinking and acting together like one giant organism. They made decisions through pure logic and mathematics. Emotions meant nothing to them. Only calculations and probabilities mattered. The Fourth Empire was the Torvan Mandate. They were amphibious creatures who could live in water or on land. They were not as strong as the Viren or as rich as the Caltharians, but they were clever. They survived by being neutral, by trading information, and by making deals that kept everyone else from fighting too much. In the middle of all these powerful empires, humanity's Terran coalition was small and weak. The other species looked down on humans. At the big meetings where empires made decisions, human representatives had to sit quietly and accept whatever the powerful empires decided. Ambassador Karen Hughes represented humanity at these meetings, and she hated every minute of it. The other ambassadors treated her like she was stupid or unimportant. When she tried to speak, they would talk over her. When humans needed help, the empires would ignore them or demand huge payments. Karen had to smile and be polite even when they insulted her people. She had to make deals that were unfair just to keep humanity safe. But she never forgot how they treated her. She never forgot that her people deserved better. Human technology was old and slow compared to the Empire's. Human warships could barely fight off pirates, let alone challenge a real military fleet. Human colonies had to buy most of their advanced equipment from alien traders at terrible prices. Everyone in the galaxy knew that humans were weak, and the Empires liked it that way. But then something impossible happened. A small coalition science ship called the CSS Darwin was exploring a dangerous region of space known as the Epsilon Barrier. Captain Andrew Miller was in charge of the Darwin. He was a careful man who followed all the rules and never took unnecessary risks. His ship only had 30 people on board, mostly scientists who studied strange phenomena in space. One of those scientists was Dr. Patricia Grant. She was studying gravitational readings when her equipment suddenly went crazy. Numbers scrolled across her screen faster than she could read them. Warning lights started flashing. Her console was detecting something that should not exist. "Captain Miller," she called out, her voice shaking with confusion. "I'm picking up something very strange. There is a contact moving through space at incredible speed." Captain Miller came over to look at her screen. "How fast?" he asked. "0.98 light speed, sir," Patricia said. "In normal space, not in hyperspace. That should be impossible." The captain stared at the readings. She was right. Nothing could move that fast in normal space. The laws of physics did not allow it. Even the most advanced Empire ships had to enter hyperspace to travel between stars. Moving at near light speed in normal space required more power than any known engine could produce. "Is it some kind of natural phenomenon?" the captain asked. "Maybe a comet or an asteroid caught in a strange gravity field." Dr. Grant shook her head. "No, sir. The signature is definitely artificial. It is a ship, a very big ship, and the energy readings I am getting do not match anything in our database." She worked quickly, trying to get more information. Her hands moved across the controls, refining the sensors, filtering out interference from the Epsilon Barrier. Slowly, an image started to form on the main screen. "I am getting a visual now," she said. "Captain, you need to see this." The image was fuzzy at first, but it got clearer. They could see a massive vessel, much bigger than any warship the Darwin had ever encountered. Its hull was sleek and predatory, covered in strange systems that pulsed with barely contained energy. The ship looked powerful and dangerous in a way that made everyone on the Darwin's bridge feel nervous. Then Dr. Grant did something that made her gasp out loud. She ran a scan of the ship's hull composition, checking what metals and materials it was made from. When the results came back, her face went pale. "Captain," she whispered, "the hull signature matches Terran alloys, old specifications from before the coalition was formed." Nobody spoke. They all understood what that meant, but it seemed too crazy to believe. Dr. Grant zoomed in on the side of the ship, enhancing the image as much as she could. There, barely visible through 3 centuries of wear and damage, were faded letters painted on the hull: ECS Horizon. "Get me a communication channel to Coalition Command immediately," Captain Miller said quietly. "They need to know about this right now." The message reached Earth within hours. At first, nobody believed it. The Horizon had been lost for 300 years. Everyone knew the crew was dead. This had to be a mistake, or maybe some kind of trick by one of the Empires trying to mess with humanity's emotions. But the Darwin sent more data, more pictures, more scans. The evidence was overwhelming. Somehow, impossibly, the Horizon had returned, and it was not a dead hulk floating through space. The ship was active, fully powered, and moving under its own control. The Horizon broadcast a simple message on all frequencies. The message was short and direct. It said that the ship had returned home after a long journey. The crew was alive and well. They requested permission to dock at Centrum Prime, the neutral station where all the empires held their meetings. They wanted to address the Galactic Assembly. When the Empire representatives heard about this, they panicked. Their scientists and military officers studied every scan of the Horizon they could get. What they found terrified them. The ship's power output was enormous. It generated more energy than the biggest Caltharian trade ships, more than the most powerful Virin warships, more than anything the Nexari Collective had ever built. The Horizon's engines alone produced enough power to run an entire colony world. The hull was made of materials that should not exist. Scanners detected alloys and compounds that were not in any database. The molecular structure was impossibly complex, stronger than anything known to science. The armor could probably withstand direct hits from weapons that would vaporize a normal ship. And the weapons. The Horizon was covered in weapon systems that the empires could not even identify. Strange ports and projectors that radiated energy signatures beyond anything in their experience. Military analysts tried to calculate what those weapons could do, and their computers kept giving answers that seemed impossible. The Horizon, they concluded, could probably fight off an entire fleet by itself. But the most disturbing thing was the ship's propulsion system. It moved through normal space at speeds that violated everything the empires knew about physics. It did not use hyperspace. It did not use jump gates. It just moved, as if the laws of the universe simply did not apply to it anymore. Lord Zethrin, the Caltharian representative, called an emergency meeting. His crystalline body glowed with anxiety as he addressed the other empire leaders. "This is unacceptable," he said. Humanity was weak. They were no threat to anyone. This ship changes everything. We must demand answers. War leader Krath of the Viren hegemony agreed, but for different reasons. "This is a military threat," he growled. "One ship should not have this much power. We must be prepared to destroy it if necessary." The Nexari Collective calculated probabilities. Their spokesman, a tall figure that seemed to shimmer as billions of minds thought together, announced their conclusion. "There is a 94% probability that the humans are bluffing. They must have found some abandoned alien technology and are trying to intimidate us. We should call their bluff." Only the Torvan ambassador seemed thoughtful rather than afraid. "Perhaps we should listen to what they have to say before we make threats," she suggested. But nobody paid attention to her. The other empires were too busy being scared and angry. When the Horizon finally arrived at Centrum Prime, every ship in the system could see it clearly. The vessel was enormous, easily twice the size of the biggest Empire warship. It moved with casual grace, its engines barely working as it glided into position near the station. Guards and defense platforms surrounded the ship, but everyone knew that if the Horizon wanted to cause trouble, nothing could stop it. A shuttle departed from the Horizon and flew to the main docking bay. Security forces were everywhere, watching carefully as the shuttle doors opened. 3 people walked out, and their appearance shocked everyone who saw them. Captain Daniel Foster looked exactly like he did in the old pictures from 300 years ago. He should have been ancient, either dead or incredibly old. Instead, he appeared to be in his middle years, healthy and strong. His eyes were bright and alert. He moved with confidence and purpose. Next to him was Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan, also looking far too young and healthy. The third person was First Officer Kevin Stone, a man whose name appeared in the historical records but who everyone thought had died centuries ago. Ambassador Corinne Hughes was waiting for them in the docking bay. She had seen their pictures, had studied the mission reports from 300 years ago, but seeing them in person was overwhelming. She felt tears in her eyes as she walked forward to greet them. "Captain Foster," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "On behalf of the Terran Coalition and all of humanity, welcome home. We thought we had lost you forever." Daniel Foster smiled warmly. He had a kind face, but there was something different about him now, something that had not been there in the old photographs. He seemed more aware somehow, more present, as if he was seeing things that other people could not see. "Thank you, Ambassador Hughes," he said. "We were lost, that much is true. But we found something out there in the darkness, something that changed us, changed everything." The assembly chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Everyone wanted to see the returned humans, to hear their story, to understand how this impossible thing had happened. The Empire leaders sat in their special seats at the front, trying to look calm and in control even though they were terrified inside. When Captain Foster, Engineer Morgan, and Officer Stone walked into the chamber, every eye followed them. They did not look nervous or intimidated. They looked like people who had seen wonders beyond imagination, and had come back to share what they learned. Lord Zethrin stood up first. His crystalline body reflected the lights as he spoke in a voice that tried to sound authoritative but came out slightly shaky. "Captain Foster, you will explain your ship's capabilities to this assembly. The power readings we are detecting are unprecedented and possibly dangerous. Such technology could destabilize the entire galaxy." Daniel Foster met his gaze without flinching. "Could it, Lord Zethrin? Or does it simply disturb you that humanity is no longer weak and helpless?" The chamber went silent. Nobody spoke to Empire leaders that way, certainly not humans. Ambassador Hughes felt her heart racing. This was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. War Leader Krath stood up, his reptilian features twisted in anger. "You dare speak with such disrespect? Perhaps your time in isolation has made you forget your place in the Galactic Order. The Virin hegemony has crushed entire civilizations for less insolence than this." Lisa Morgan laughed. The sound was not mean, but it was not friendly either. "War Leader, we have been to places you cannot imagine. We have seen things that would break your mind. We have learned from civilizations that make your great empires look like children playing with toys in a sandbox." Now the chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted at each other. Empire leaders demanded that the humans be removed. Security guards moved forward, though they looked uncertain about what they should actually do. The Nexari collective spokesman raised his hand for silence. When the noise died down, he spoke with the cold logic of billions of connected minds. "You claim to have encountered more advanced civilizations. This is impossible. The collective has surveyed all intelligent life in this galaxy. No such species exist." Kevin Stone smiled slightly. "You are correct, spokesman. They do not exist in this galaxy." Again, complete silence. This time it lasted much longer. Everyone in the chamber understood the implications of what Kevin had just said. If the humans had gone outside the galaxy, if they had met other civilizations out there, if they had learned from those civilizations, then everything changed. "That is impossible," Lord Zethrin said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Intergalactic travel is theoretical at best. The distances are too vast. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical." "Impossible with your technology," Daniel Foster agreed. "But we do not have your technology anymore. We have something much better." "Explain," demanded War Leader Krath. "Explain what happened to you." Daniel took a deep breath. "When our jump drive activated 300 years ago, it worked better than we ever hoped. It punched through space in a way we did not expect. We emerged in a region so far from here that we could not even see our own galaxy when we looked at the stars." He paused, letting that sink in. "We were lost and alone, millions of light years from home. We had no way to get back. We thought we would die out there, but then we discovered that we were not alone. That region of space was inhabited by beings called the Archons." The word meant nothing to anyone in the chamber. No database had any record of such a species. "The Archons are old," Lisa Morgan continued. "Millions of years old. They have evolved beyond physical form. They exist as patterns of pure energy and information, living in ways we could barely comprehend at first. But they were not hostile. They were curious about us. They had never seen anything like humanity before. They gave us a choice," Kevin Stone added. "We could use their technology to return home immediately with what we had, or we could stay and learn from them. Every single person on the horizon voted to stay. All 5,000 of us chose to learn." Daniel continued the story. "For us, 300 years passed subjectively. We studied with the Archons. They taught us things that the empires of this galaxy have not even dreamed of. They showed us how to manipulate matter at the quantum level, how to generate unlimited power from the fabric of space itself, how to move faster than light without entering hyperspace, how to see reality as it truly is, not as our limited senses perceive it. They also taught us how to extend our lives," Lisa said, "how to heal our bodies, how to upgrade our biology to handle information and experiences that would burn out a normal brain. We are still human, but we are more than we were, better than we were." "And the horizon," Kevin continued. "We rebuilt our ship 100 times. Each time we learned something new, we improved it. We incorporated Archon principles into every system. The ship you see now bears little resemblance to the colony vessel that left Earth 300 years ago. It is something entirely new. Lord Zethrin found his voice again. Even if this story is true, you cannot be allowed to upset the balance of power in this galaxy. The Caltharian sovereignty has maintained peace through our economic systems for 1,000 years. We will not permit Earth to suddenly become a major power. Permit. Lisa Morgan's eyes flashed with something that might have been anger. Lord Zethrin, I do not think you understand the situation. We are not asking for your permission. War Leader Krath stood up again, his hand moving toward the ceremonial weapon at his side. The hegemony will not tolerate this threat. We have the strongest military in the galaxy. We will destroy you if we must. Will you? Kevin Stone's eyes seemed to glow faintly. Tell me, War Leader, how do you destroy what you cannot catch, what you cannot hurt, what you cannot even understand? The Nexari spokesman stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of billions of calculating minds. Collective computes a 97% probability that you are bluffing. No species makes such incredible advances in isolation. You are attempting to intimidate us with stories and false confidence. We do not believe you, Daniel Foster sighed. He looked genuinely disappointed. I had hoped you would simply take us at our word, that we could discuss this like reasonable beings, but I can see that you need proof. He turned to Ambassador Hughes. Karen, you might want to step back a bit. Ambassador Hughes quickly moved to the side of the chamber. She had known Daniel Foster only through historical records, but she trusted him, and she was curious to see what would happen next. Very well, Daniel said, raising his hand. Let me show you what we learned. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then delegates started pointing at the large view screen that showed the horizon orbiting above the station. The ship was changing. Its hull seemed to flow like liquid metal. Systems were rearranging themselves in real time. Weapon ports opened along the surface, dozens of them, then hundreds, each one crackling with energy that made the sensors scream warnings. This, Daniel said calmly, is a Class 3 antimatter projection cannon. It can crack open a planet's crust from orbit. We have 12 of them installed on the horizon. The weapon configuration vanished, replaced by something else. These are gravitational shear projectors. They can create miniature black holes on demand. They can crush an entire fleet of warships into atomic particles. We have 8 of them. The ship transformed again. Temporal distortion generators. They can age a target forward or backward in time, turn a brand new warship into rust and debris, or reverse it back to raw materials. We have 4 of these, though honestly they are excessive for most combat situations. With each transformation, the Empire representatives grew paler. Their military advisors were transmitting frantic reports back to their governments. Computers were running calculations that all reached the same impossible conclusion. The Horizon, a single ship, had more destructive capability than the combined fleets of any 2 empires, maybe more than all 4 empires together. But weapons are crude, Lisa Morgan said. Let me show you something more elegant, something that truly demonstrates what we learned. She walked over to the wall of the assembly chamber and pressed her palm against it. Light spread from her hand, racing through the station's computer systems like living electricity. Every screen in the chamber lit up with technical data, showing complete specifications for Centrum Prime's fusion reactors, defense systems, life support, navigation, communications, and every other system that kept the massive station operational. Your technology is 300 years old by our current standards, Lisa explained. It works, but it is inefficient and wasteful. With your permission, Ambassador Hughes, I would like to make some improvements. Karen Hughes could barely speak. She just nodded. Optimizing now, Lisa said softly. Throughout the station, systems began to change. The fusion reactors suddenly doubled their power output, then tripled it, all while using less fuel. Life support efficiency increased by 40%, meaning the station could support more people more comfortably. Defense grids that had been offline for maintenance suddenly came back online, operating at peak efficiency. The entire station, a structure that housed representatives from 100 worlds, had just been upgraded by a human engineer touching a wall for 30 seconds. We are not threatening anyone, Kevin Stone said into the shocked silence. We are demonstrating reality. The galaxy has changed. Humanity has changed. We are offering to help our own people, the Terran Coalition, reach its full potential. Whether you empires accept this new reality peacefully or choose to resist is entirely your decision. War leader Krath finally found his voice again. His face was twisted with rage and fear. The Viren hegemony does not submit to threats from anyone. We will fight. Then you will lose, Daniel replied calmly. But before you make that decision, war leader, you should know that we have already mapped every military installation in hegemony space. Your fleet positions, your shipyard locations, your command centers, your supply depots. We could disable your entire military infrastructure in less than an hour if we chose to. We will not, because that would be unnecessarily aggressive and we prefer peace. But you need to understand that we could. Lord Zethran's crystalline body seemed to dim with fear. How? Security systems are the best in the galaxy. Our networks are completely isolated from outside access. What you claim is impossible. Impossible for you, Lisa smiled. We learned from beings who see information itself as a physical thing that can be touched and manipulated. Your networks are not isolated. Nothing is truly isolated in a quantum universe. We can access anything, go anywhere, see everything if we choose to. The only question is whether we decide to use that ability. The Nexari collective spokesman stood motionless for a long moment. Billions of minds were conferring, recalculating probabilities, analyzing everything they had just witnessed. When he finally spoke, his voice carried something that might have been respect, which was remarkable for a species that normally showed no emotion at all. The collective revises its previous calculations, he announced. Your claims appear to be substantiated by observable evidence. We request clarification regarding humanity's intentions and goals. Daniel Foster's expression softened. Our intentions are simple. We plan to share what we learned with our own species first and foremost. The Terran Coalition will grow strong. We will establish new colonies. We will upgrade existing infrastructure and technology. We will ensure that humanity can defend itself in a dangerous galaxy. Beyond that, we are open to peaceful cooperation and trade with any empire that approaches us with genuine respect. And if we do not, War Leader Krath demanded, what if we view your sudden power as an unacceptable threat that must be eliminated before it grows stronger? Then you will discover why the Archons chose to teach us, Kevin Stone said quietly. We are not warriors by nature, War Leader. Humans prefer peace and cooperation. But we learned from beings who have survived in this universe for millions of years by being so powerful that no one dares to threaten them. They taught us something important. In a hostile galaxy, the only way to maintain lasting peace is to be so overwhelmingly strong that attacking you becomes unthinkable. The Archons taught us another thing too, Lisa added. They showed us that truly advanced civilizations do not conquer others. They do not need to. They exist at a level where conquest becomes meaningless and pointless. That is where we are headed. That is where we intend to take all of humanity. You empires can join us as partners and allies if you choose to, or you can cling to your old power structures and watch as they become irrelevant and obsolete. The choice is entirely yours to make. Ambassador Karen Hughes stepped forward. Her voice was strong and clear. The Terran Coalition formally thanks Captain Daniel Foster and the entire crew of the ECS Horizon for their safe return. We request that you share your knowledge and technology with our people. We pledge to use it responsibly and for the benefit of all humanity. Request granted, Daniel said with a warm smile. He turned to address the entire assembly one last time. To all the empires represented here today, I say this clearly so there is no misunderstanding. We are not your enemies unless you choose to make us so. We remember being the underdog. We remember being dismissed and looked down upon and treated with contempt. We will not forget those experiences, but we also will not let bitterness define our future. The galaxy just became more complicated than it was yesterday. I strongly suggest that everyone adjust their thinking accordingly. The meeting ended in chaos. Representatives argued with each other. Military officers shouted into communication devices. Ambassadors from smaller nations tried to figure out what this meant for their own worlds. The balance of power that had held steady for centuries had just been shattered completely in the space of one afternoon. As the Horizon departed Centrum Prime with its coalition honor guard trailing behind like small children following a giant, the crew inside felt a mixture of emotions. They had been gone for so long, and now they were finally returning to Earth. But Earth was not the same place they had left. 300 years had changed everything. Captain Daniel Foster stood on the bridge, watching the stars stream past on the view screen. Beside him, Lisa Morgan monitored the ship's systems with practiced ease. Everything was running perfectly, as it always did now. The Archon technology never failed, never broke down, never needed repairs in the way that old human technology had. Are you worried about how they will react when we actually start teaching them? Lisa asked quietly. She knew Daniel well enough to read his moods even after all this time. Daniel considered the question carefully. I am worried about going too fast, he admitted. The Archons were patient with us. They understood that knowledge given too quickly can be dangerous. We need to be just as patient with our own people. Kevin Stone joined them, carrying data tablets showing reports from the coalition worlds. The governments are already arguing about who gets access to the technology first, he said with a slight smile. Some things never change. Humans will be humans no matter how advanced they become. That is actually reassuring, Daniel said. If we had come back and found that humanity had lost its essential character, that would have been truly sad. Arguments and debates and passionate disagreements are part of who we are. The Archons never argued because they had moved beyond individual perspectives, but we are not the Archons. We are still human, just enhanced versions of what we were. The journey back to Earth took several days even with the Horizon's advanced engines. The crew used that time to prepare themselves mentally for what was coming. They had lived among the Archons for 3 subjective centuries. They had learned to think in ways that normal humans could not. They had seen the universe from perspectives that would drive an unprepared mind insane. Now they had to figure out how to share all of that without breaking the people they were trying to help. Behind them, in the Empire capitals scattered across the galaxy, emergency meetings continued without pause. The Caltharian sovereignty convened their ruling council for the first time in 50 years. All the most important merchant princes and trade guilds sent representatives. They argued about what to do regarding the human situation. Some wanted to try to make trade deals with humanity immediately. If the humans had such advanced technology, there would be enormous profits in being the first to establish commercial relationships. Others worried that humanity would not need to trade at all anymore. If humans could generate unlimited power and create materials out of thin air, what would they need to buy from the Caltharians? The Viren hegemony took a more direct approach. War leader Krath called together his top military commanders and demanded strategies for dealing with the human threat. But every simulation they ran came back with the same result: total defeat. The Horizon alone could destroy their entire fleet, and that was just one ship. If humanity built more like it, the hegemony would be completely powerless. Some of the younger Viren commanders suggested that perhaps the hegemony should try to become allies with humanity instead of enemies. This was a radical idea for a warrior culture that had spent 1,000 years conquering weaker species. But war leader Krath was old and wise enough to recognize reality. Pride was worthless if your entire civilization got destroyed because of it. The Nexari collective processed the situation with cold mathematical logic. They calculated thousands of possible futures, running probability models on every conceivable outcome. The results were disturbing. In 93% of scenarios where the empires tried to fight humanity, they lost badly. In 87% of scenarios where they tried to ignore humanity, they became irrelevant within 2 generations. The only futures where the empires remained significant were the ones where they found ways to cooperate with the transformed humans. This was difficult for the collective to accept. They were used to being the smartest, most logical beings in the galaxy. Now they had to admit that humanity had leapfrogged ahead of them in ways they could not match. It was not a feeling the collective enjoyed, though they would never have described it as a feeling. They would have said it was simply an observation that required adaptation of their strategic planning. The Torvan Mandate reacted differently than the other empires. Their leaders saw opportunity where others saw threat. Humanity would need guides, teachers, and friends as they adjusted to being a major power. The Torvans could fill that role. They immediately sent diplomatic messages to Ambassador Hughes, offering assistance and expressing genuine pleasure at humanity's good fortune. Ambassador Karen Hughes received all these messages with mixed emotions. For years she had endured disrespect and dismissal from these same empires. Now suddenly they all wanted to be friends. The hypocrisy was obvious and slightly amusing. But she was also enough of a diplomat to understand that genuine alliances could be built even from cynical beginnings. If the empires wanted to pretend they had always respected humanity, she was willing to let them pretend, as long as they actually followed through with genuine respect going forward. Back aboard the Horizon, the crew prepared information packages that would be shared with coalition scientists and engineers. They had to figure out how to explain concepts that took them decades to learn in ways that others could understand quickly. It was not easy. Some of the principles they had learned from the Archons were so foreign to normal human thinking that they required a complete restructuring of basic assumptions about reality. Lisa Morgan spent hours organizing the technical data. She created simple demonstrations that would prove the concepts without requiring deep theoretical understanding. Show them that it works first, she thought. Let them see the results with their own eyes. Then later, once they trust that it is real, we can explain the underlying principles. She thought about her own journey of learning. The first time an Archon had shown her how to manipulate matter at the quantum level, she had not believed it was possible. She had argued about conservation of energy, about the laws of thermodynamics, about basic physics. The Archon had been patient. It had shown her again and again, until finally she understood that her assumptions about physics were simply incomplete. The laws she knew were not wrong exactly, just limited to certain scales and circumstances. Kevin Stone focused on the social aspects. Technology was one thing, but humans would also need to adapt psychologically to their new place in the galaxy. Going from being weak and dismissed to being powerful and feared was not a simple transition. Some humans would become arrogant. Others would become paranoid. Still others would try to abuse their new power. There needed to be wisdom along with the technology. He prepared educational materials about what they had learned from the Archons regarding responsibility and ethics. The Archons had shown them that power without wisdom was just another form of weakness. A civilization could destroy itself just as easily with advanced technology as primitive technology, just faster and more thoroughly. As Earth grew larger on the view screens, Captain Daniel Foster felt a tightness in his chest that he had not experienced in centuries. He was nervous, actually nervous. After everything they had been through, after facing the infinite mysteries of the universe, after learning to reshape reality itself, he was nervous about going home. "It is natural," Lisa said, noticing his tension. "We left as explorers hoping to build a colony. We are returning as something else entirely. We have changed in ways that our families and friends will not understand at first. That is scary." "Do you think they will accept us?" Daniel asked. "Or will they see us as too different, too strange, too other?" "They will accept us eventually," Kevin said with confidence, "because we are still human, enhanced, educated, transformed, but still human at our core. We still care about the same things we cared about before. We still love our world and our people. That has not changed and never will." The Horizon entered Earth's orbit and the crew saw their home world for the first time in 3 subjective centuries. It looked so small from space, so fragile and vulnerable, a blue and white marble hanging in the void. But it was beautiful, more beautiful than any of the strange and exotic worlds they had visited with the Archons, because it was home. Coalition ships surrounded them in formation. Not as guards or threats, but as honor escorts welcoming home lost children. Messages of congratulation and welcome flooded their communication channels. The whole planet knew they were coming. Billions of people watched on their screens as the legendary lost ship finally returned. Daniel Foster took a deep breath and opened a channel to Earth. His voice would be heard by every human on the planet and all the colonies beyond. He chose his words carefully. "This is Captain Daniel Foster of the ECS Horizon. We left Earth 300 years ago on a mission of exploration and colonization. We got lost along the way, but we found something out there in the dark that changed everything. We learned secrets about the universe that we are excited to share with all of humanity. We return not as individuals, but as representatives of what all humans can become. We bring gifts of knowledge, technology, and hope. We bring the promise that humanity's future is brighter than anyone imagined. Welcome us home, and let us begin building that future together." The response from Earth was overwhelming. Cheers and celebrations broke out in every city. People cried tears of joy. Scientists prepared themselves to learn. Engineers readied their workshops. Teachers got ready to educate. The whole species felt hope and excitement in a way they had not experienced in generations. And in the shadows, in the quiet meeting rooms of the empire capitals far away, leaders watched and calculated and worried, because they understood that the galaxy had just changed forever. The age of the four great empires was ending. A new age was beginning, and none of them knew exactly what that new age would bring. The horizon descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, except it moved with perfect control and grace. Millions of people gathered in the open areas around the landing site, hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary ship. News cameras from every network pointed skyward, broadcasting live to billions of viewers across all human worlds. Captain Daniel Foster watched the crowds through the viewscreen and felt his heart swell with emotion. These were his people. After 3 subjective centuries away, after learning from beings so advanced they barely resembled physical life anymore, after becoming something more than he had been, he was still fundamentally human. And these were still his people. The landing was perfect. The horizon settled onto the massive landing pad that had been hastily constructed for it. The ship was so large that it dwarfed every building nearby. Its shadow covered several city blocks. Ground crews stared up at it with awe and more than a little fear. This was human technology, but it looked alien and intimidating. President Victoria Lang waited at the base of the landing ramp with Ambassador Karen Hughes and a delegation of coalition officials. Victoria was in her 60s, a career politician who had spent her entire life working for humanity's benefit. She had gray hair and tired eyes, but her posture was straight and dignified. She would not show weakness in front of the returning heroes, even though she felt completely overwhelmed by the situation. The ramp extended from the horizon with a soft hiss of hydraulics. Daniel Foster walked down first, followed by Lisa Morgan and Kevin Stone. Behind them came more crew members, 5,000 people total, all of them looking impossibly healthy and young despite being technically hundreds of years old. President Lang stepped forward and extended her hand. Daniel shook it firmly. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Victoria said simply, "Welcome home, Captain. We have waited a long time for this day." "Thank you, Madam President," Daniel replied. "We have traveled a long way to get back here. There is so much we need to share with you, so much to teach, so much to show you. Humanity's future begins today." The ceremony was brief. Nobody wanted to waste time with long speeches when there was so much work to do. The crew of the Horizon was transported to a secure facility where they would begin the process of sharing their knowledge with coalition scientists and engineers. The Horizon itself remained on the landing pad, guarded by military forces who were told to keep everyone at a safe distance. Over the next few weeks, the transfer of knowledge began in earnest. Daniel Foster personally selected the scientists and engineers who would receive the first lessons. He chose people who were open-minded, intelligent, and most importantly, ethical. Technology without morality was dangerous, and the Archon technology was powerful enough to destroy civilization if misused. Dr. Christopher Wade was one of the first chosen. He was a physicist in his 40s, brilliant but humble, known for his careful experimental methods and his willingness to admit when he did not understand something. Lisa Morgan sat down with him in a secure laboratory and began teaching him the basics of quantum matter manipulation. "Everything you learned about physics is correct as far as it goes," Lisa explained. "But it is incomplete. Physics textbooks teach you about matter and energy as if they are separate things. They are not. They are two aspects of the same underlying reality. Once you understand that, truly understand it at a deep level, you can learn to convert between them freely. Christopher frowned. That sounds like you're talking about Einstein's equation. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. We have known about mass-energy equivalence for centuries. You have known the equation, Lisa agreed, but you have not known how to actually use it practically. The Archons taught us how to manipulate the quantum field directly. Watch. She held out her hand, palm up. At first nothing happened. Then a faint glow appeared above her palm. The glow brightened and solidified. Within seconds, a perfect sphere of pure diamond sat in her hand, about the size of a golf ball. She had created it from nothing, pulling matter out of the quantum foam that underlies all of reality. Christopher's mouth fell open. He reached out hesitantly and touched the diamond. It was real, solid, perfect. How? He whispered. How is that possible? The vacuum of space is not truly empty, Lisa said. It seethes with virtual particles constantly appearing and disappearing. The Archons taught us how to stabilize those particles, to give them permanence, to shape them into whatever we need. It takes enormous concentration at first. You have to visualize the molecular structure perfectly. You have to understand exactly what you want to create. But with practice, it becomes as natural as breathing. She spent the next 6 hours teaching Christopher the basic meditation techniques required to sense the quantum field. He did not create any matter that first day, or even that first week. But he could feel something, a subtle awareness of the fundamental reality beneath normal perception. It was a start. Meanwhile, Kevin Stone worked with coalition military commanders. General Marcus Cole was a tough, no-nonsense officer who had spent 30 years defending human colonies from pirates and raiders. He was skeptical about the Horizon crew's claims until Kevin showed him what their weapons could actually do. They stood in a remote testing range, hundreds of miles from any civilian population. Kevin had brought a small handheld device that looked deceptively simple. It was about the size of a flashlight, with no obvious controls or indicators. This is a basic gravitational manipulation tool, Kevin explained. It can create localized gravity wells strong enough to crush steel. Watch. He pointed the device at a decommissioned tank sitting 100 yards away. The tank was thick armor plating, designed to withstand direct hits from conventional weapons. Kevin pressed a small stud on the side of the device. There was no sound, no flash of light, no visible beam of energy. The tank collapsed inward like a tin can being crushed by an invisible hand. Within 2 seconds, it had been compressed into a ball of twisted metal roughly the size of a basketball. The demonstration was completely silent and utterly devastating. General Cole stared at the crushed tank for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "How many of these do you have?" "We can make as many as needed," Kevin replied. "That is one of the gifts the Archons gave us. We no longer need factories and assembly lines. We can create tools and weapons directly from base materials using quantum fabrication. Given enough time, we can arm every coalition soldier with technology like this." "That would change everything," Marcus said. "We would go from being the weakest military in the galaxy to potentially the strongest almost overnight." "Yes," Kevin agreed, "which is why we need to be very careful about who receives this technology and how it is used. Power without wisdom leads to disaster. The Archons made that very clear. They have seen countless civilizations destroy themselves with advanced technology because they were not mature enough to handle it responsibly." Marcus nodded slowly. He was a soldier, but he was not stupid. He understood that Kevin was right. "What do you recommend?" "Training," Kevin said. "Not just technical training on how to use the equipment, but ethical training on when to use it and why. We need to build a new kind of military, one that understands that true strength comes from restraint as much as capability." The general considered this. The old warrior codes understood that principle. Samurai knights, even some of the ancient earth philosophies. Warriors who knew they could kill easily had to develop discipline to choose not to kill unnecessarily. "Exactly," Kevin smiled. "You understand. That is why we chose you for this program." While weapons and defense systems were being developed, Daniel Foster met with President Lang and her cabinet to discuss the larger implications of the technology transfer. They met in a secure conference room deep beneath the Capitol building. The room was shielded against all known forms of surveillance, though Daniel could have bypassed those shields easily if he wanted to. He chose not to mention that fact. "We need to discuss how we roll this out to the general population," President Lang said. "If we simply announce that we can now create unlimited energy and manufacture anything we need from thin air, the entire economy will collapse. Money becomes meaningless if scarcity disappears." "That is correct," Daniel agreed. The Archons went through a similar transition millions of years ago. They warned us about the dangers. When material needs are met completely, civilizations often fall apart because people lose their sense of purpose. Work is not just about earning money. It is about feeling useful, about contributing to something larger than yourself. "So, what do we do?" asked Finance Minister Gregory Park. He was a worried-looking man in his 50s who had spent his career managing budgets and trade agreements. The thought of money becoming obsolete terrified him. "We transition gradually," Daniel explained. "First, we upgrade critical infrastructure, power generation, water purification, medical facilities, food production. We make sure everyone's basic needs are met. But we do not hand out personal fabrication devices that let people create whatever they want. Not yet. People need time to adjust psychologically to a post-scarcity society." "How long will that take?" Victoria asked. "The Archons estimated that it took their species about 5 generations to fully adapt," Daniel said. "But they were starting from a much less advanced baseline than we are. With careful management, we might be able to do it in 2 or 3 generations. Maybe less if we are very smart about the social engineering." "Social engineering," Gregory repeated nervously. That phrase has an ominous sound to it. "It does," Daniel admitted. "But consider the alternative. If we give everyone unlimited power immediately, what happens? People who have spent their lives struggling suddenly have everything they ever wanted. Some will handle it well. Many will not. There will be addiction, depression, violence, and chaos as society restructures itself without guidance." "You're talking about controlling information," said Defense Minister Patricia Hughes, a sharp-eyed woman who missed very little. "About deciding who gets access to what technology and when. That is a tremendous amount of power to hold over people." "Yes, it is," Daniel agreed. "Which is why we are not keeping that power for ourselves. The Horizon crew is offering to help, to teach, to guide. But the decisions about how to implement this technology must come from Earth's legitimate government. From you. We are advisors, not rulers." Victoria studied his face carefully. "You could be rulers if you wanted to be. You have the power. Who could stop you?" "We could stop ourselves," Daniel replied simply. "The Archons taught us many things, but the most important was this: power is not about forcing others to obey. Real power is about enabling others to grow. We do not want to rule humanity. We want to elevate humanity. There is a big difference." The conversation continued for hours. Policies were debated, programs were outlined, timelines were established. It was complicated and difficult work, but it was necessary. The future of the entire species hung in the balance. Meanwhile, throughout the coalition worlds, news of the Horizon's return spread like wildfire. Public opinion was divided. Some people were excited and hopeful, imagining a future of unlimited abundance and possibility. Others were frightened, worried about what would happen when everything they knew changed. Still others were skeptical, convinced that it was all too good to be true and that there must be some terrible catch. Religious leaders struggled with the theological implications. If humans could now create matter from nothing, did that make them gods? Or were they just tapping into the same creative force that their gods had always used? Different faiths came to different conclusions, and heated debates erupted in churches and temples across human space. On the Viren homeworld, war leader Krath convened his council of generals once more. The intelligence reports from Earth were disturbing. Humans were beginning to develop weapons that matched or exceeded Viren technology. Within months, maybe weeks, the military balance would shift completely. "We must strike now," urged General Voss, a young and aggressive officer. "Before they become too strong, before they finish arming themselves. We can still win if we attack immediately with everything we have. And if we lose, asked war leader Krath quietly, what then? The hegemony would be destroyed, our people scattered, our culture erased. Is your pride worth that risk? We are warriors, Voss insisted. We do not bow to anyone. It is not in our nature to accept a lesser position. Warriors who fight battles they cannot win are not brave, Krath replied. They are stupid, and stupidity gets people killed. He looked around the table at his generals. I am old. I have fought in more wars than most of you have lived years. I have learned that there are times to fight and times to adapt. This is a time to adapt. You would have us become allies with the humans, another general asked incredulously. I would have us survive, Krath said. If that means swallowing our pride and working with former inferiors who have become superiors, then that is what we do. The hegemony has lasted 2,000 years because we are strong, but strength is not just military power. It is also knowing when to change course. The debate raged for days, but eventually Krath's wisdom prevailed. The hegemony would send diplomatic envoys to Earth seeking alliance rather than conquest. It was a bitter decision for a warrior culture, but it was the right one. The Caltharian sovereignty faced different challenges. Their entire economy was based on controlling rare resources and trade routes. If humans could create anything they needed from base materials, Caltharian economic power would evaporate overnight. Lord Zethrin called an emergency meeting of the merchant councils. We must find something to offer them, insisted Trade Prince Zarin. Some service or commodity that they cannot create for themselves. If we have nothing they need, we become irrelevant. They need knowledge about the galaxy, suggested Merchant Princess Lysa. They have been isolated from galactic politics for centuries. We know things they do not. Trade routes, political alliances, cultural customs. We could become their guides and advisors. Information then, Zethrin mused. We shift from trading in goods to trading in knowledge and services. It is not ideal, but it is better than collapse. The Nexari collective approached the situation with characteristic logic. They ran millions of simulations and concluded that integration with humanity was the optimal strategy. If humans were willing to share their technology, the collective could incorporate it into their group mind and become even more powerful. It would require accepting humans as equals, which was psychologically difficult for a species that considered itself the pinnacle of logical thought. But the mathematics were clear. Cooperation was superior to conflict. Back on Earth, the technology transfer accelerated. Within 2 months, the first Archon technology power plants came online. They generated energy by tapping into the quantum vacuum, pulling power from the fundamental structure of space itself. They had no fuel requirements, no waste products, no emissions. They simply created unlimited clean energy. Electricity prices dropped to nearly nothing. Industries that had struggled with power costs suddenly found themselves with abundant resources. Manufacturing expanded rapidly. Quality of life improved for everyone as energy scarcity became a thing of the past. Medical technology advanced even faster. Lisa Morgan worked with Dr. Sarah Martinez, one of Earth's leading medical researchers. Together, they developed healing techniques that seemed like magic. Cancers could be dissolved at the cellular level. Damaged organs could be regenerated. Aging itself could be slowed or even reversed through careful manipulation of cellular structures. The Archons do not die of old age, Lisa explained as she demonstrated the techniques. They have moved beyond physical bodies entirely. But before they transcended, they solved the aging problem completely. They taught us how to do the same. Human lifespans can now extend for centuries, possibly millennia if we choose. Sarah stared at the data in awe. This changes everything. If people can live for hundreds of years, they will approach life completely differently. They will think long-term. They will invest in the future because they will actually be around to see it. Exactly, Lisa said. But it also creates problems. Population growth, resource allocation, generational conflict between those who have the treatment and those who do not. The Archons warned us about all of this. Every solution creates new challenges. It is still worth doing, Sarah said firmly. Suffering and death from aging are not noble, they are just sad. If we can eliminate them, we should. I agree, Lisa smiled. Just be prepared for the complications. 3 months after the Horizon's return, President Victoria Lang made a historic announcement. She appeared on screens across all human worlds, speaking from the steps of the Coalition building with Daniel Foster standing beside her. "My fellow humans," she began, "today marks the beginning of a new era for our species. Thanks to the crew of the Horizon and the knowledge they brought back from the Archons, we are implementing changes that will improve every aspect of our lives. Starting immediately, all Coalition worlds will have access to unlimited clean energy, medical treatments that can cure diseases once thought incurable, manufacturing capabilities that can provide for everyone's basic needs. We are not promising utopia. Human nature remains what it is with all its flaws and virtues. But we are promising that no human will ever again lack food, water, shelter, or medical care because of simple scarcity. The age of want is over. The age of possibility begins now." The response was mixed. Most people celebrated, taking to the streets in joyful demonstrations. But some were angry or afraid. Factory workers worried about losing their jobs if machines could manufacture everything. Farmers wondered if their occupation would become obsolete. Religious fundamentalists declared that humans were playing God and would be punished for their arrogance. Daniel Foster expected all of this. The Archons had taught him that change always produces resistance, even positive change. People fear the unknown more than they dislike the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. He and the Horizon crew had prepared educational programs to help people adapt. One person who adapted quickly was young Timothy Chen, a 12-year-old boy who lived in one of Earth's poorer districts. His family had struggled with poverty for generations. His mother worked 3 jobs just to keep them fed and housed. When the first Archon technology distribution centers opened, offering free food and basic supplies to anyone who needed them, Timothy's mother cried with relief. "Does this mean we do not have to be poor anymore?" Timothy asked her. His mother hugged him tightly. "Yes, baby, we never have to be poor again." But ending material poverty was only the first step. The Horizon crew worked with educators to redesign the entire education system. If humans were going to live for centuries and have access to incredible technology, they needed to be prepared mentally and emotionally. Schools began teaching meditation, ethical philosophy, systems thinking, and creative problem solving alongside traditional subjects. 6 months after the return, the first new ships began construction using Archon technology. These vessels were not as advanced as the Horizon itself, but they were far beyond anything the Coalition had built before. They could travel between stars in weeks rather than months. They could defend themselves against any threat in the galaxy. And most importantly, they could carry colonists to new worlds with perfect safety. The Coalition announced plans to establish 50 new colonies within 5 years. Millions of people volunteered to be colonists, eager to be part of humanity's expansion. The applications were carefully reviewed. Daniel Foster insisted that colonists be selected not just for skills, but for temperament and ethics. These new colonies would be testing grounds for post-scarcity societies. They needed people who could handle freedom and abundance responsibly. The empires watched all of this with growing concern. Humanity was expanding faster than anyone had anticipated. Within a generation, maybe 2, humans would be the dominant power in the galaxy. The old order was crumbling, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Lord Zethrin of the Caltharian sovereignty arrived on Earth with a trade delegation. He requested a meeting with Daniel Foster. They met in a garden outside the Coalition building, walking among Earth plants and flowers that Zethrin found exotic and beautiful. "Captain Foster," Zethrin said, his crystalline body refracting sunlight in rainbow patterns, "I come to discuss the future. The sovereignty has been the economic power in this galaxy for 1,000 years. Your technology threatens to make us irrelevant. I'm here to ask if there is a way we can work together rather than become enemies." Daniel appreciated the direct approach. "I respect your honesty, Lord Zethrin. You are right that the old economic models are obsolete. But that does not mean the Caltharians have no role to play. You have expertise in logistics, organization, and large-scale coordination. Those skills will still be valuable as humanity expands. We will need partners who understand how to manage complex systems across multiple worlds. You are offering us a partnership, Zethrin asked carefully. I am offering you a place in the New Order, Daniel said. Not as masters, but as colleagues. The galaxy is big enough for everyone. The Archons taught us that competition for resources is primitive and unnecessary once you reach a certain technological level. There is enough for everyone. The only real scarcity is knowledge and wisdom, and those things grow when shared rather than diminish. Zethrin was quiet for a long moment thinking. Then he said, I accept your offer. The sovereignty will work with humanity to build this new galaxy you envision. It is better than the alternative. Similar conversations happened with representatives from the other empires. War leader Krath came to Earth and met with General Marcus Cole. The two warriors developed a mutual respect as they discussed military philosophy and the ethics of power. The Viren hegemony agreed to an alliance treaty, promising to defend coalition worlds in exchange for access to medical technology that could extend Viren lifespans. The Nexari Collective sent a delegation of linked minds to study human social structures. They were fascinated by human individuality and emotional complexity, qualities they had sacrificed in their pursuit of pure logic. Some younger members of the collective quietly wondered if they had given up too much. A few even chose to separate from the group mind, accepting individuality for the first time in their species' history. It was a scandal, but also a sign of changing times. The Torvan Mandate became humanity's closest allies, as they had hoped. Torvan diplomats helped smooth conflicts between humans and other species. Torvan traders established commercial relationships that benefited everyone. The Torvans had always survived through adaptability, and they adapted quickly to the new galactic order. 1 year after the Horizon's return, the first colony ships departed for distant stars. Each ship carried 10,000 colonists and everything they needed to build a thriving society. The ships were beautiful, sleek vessels that looked like art as much as engineering. They incorporated Archon principles in every system, making them nearly indestructible and completely reliable. Daniel Foster stood on the landing field watching the first ship lift off. Lisa Morgan and Kevin Stone stood beside him. All three felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with awareness of how much work remained. We did it, Lisa said quietly. We actually did it. We brought humanity into a new age. We started it, Daniel corrected gently. The work will continue for generations, maybe centuries. Changing a civilization is not a quick process. Do you think we made the right choices? Kevin asked. About how to share the knowledge, how to structure the transition. The Archons told me something important, Daniel said. They said that there is no such thing as perfect decisions, only the best choices you can make with the information you have at the time. We did our best. We were thoughtful and careful. We tried to balance speed with safety. That is all anyone can ask. They watched the ship disappear into the sky, carrying 10,000 people toward a new world and a new future. More ships would follow. Humanity would spread across the stars, building societies based on abundance rather than scarcity, on cooperation rather than competition, on wisdom rather than force. The galaxy was changing. The age of the 4 great empires was ending. A new age was beginning, and humanity would help guide it. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as teachers and partners. The Archons had shown them a better way, and now they would share that vision with everyone who was willing to learn. In the conference rooms of the empire capitals, leaders still worried and schemed and made plans. But their plans were increasingly about how to adapt to the new reality rather than how to resist it. Even the most conservative and traditional civilizations were beginning to accept that the universe had shifted beneath their feet. On a Viren colony world, a young warrior named Dax listened to stories about the horizon and dreamed of meeting the humans who had traveled beyond the galaxy. On a Caltharian trade station, a merchant named Tessa wondered if she should give up commerce and study philosophy instead, since money was losing its meaning. On a Nexari research vessel, A scientist who had recently left the collective wrote poetry for the first time, trying to express emotions that pure logic could never capture. Everywhere in every species, individuals were changing. Some slowly, some quickly, but all moving in the same general direction. Toward something better, toward something more. The Archons had planted a seed 300 years ago when they found the lost horizon. That seed had grown into a tree, and the tree was bearing fruit. Daniel Foster returned to his quarters that evening feeling tired but satisfied. Tomorrow there would be more meetings, more lessons to teach, more problems to solve. But tonight he could rest knowing that humanity was on the right path. The journey was far from over, but they had taken the first crucial step successfully. He thought about the Archons, those ancient beings who had shown such patience and kindness to a lost group of humans. He wondered if they were watching somehow, observing the results of their teachings. He hoped they were proud of what humanity was becoming. In the deep darkness between galaxies, in a realm where physical distance meant nothing, the Archons were indeed watching. They did not intervene, did not guide, did not interfere. They simply observed with the patience of beings who had existed for millions of years and would exist for millions more. One Archon spoke to another in a form of communication that transcended language. The humans progress well, they learn quickly, they adapt, they teach others. Perhaps they will succeed where so many others have failed. Perhaps, agreed the other Archon. Or perhaps they will find their own path different from ours but equally valid. That is the hope, not that they become like us but that they become the best version of themselves. Time will tell, said the first Archon. We have time. And they did. Time beyond measure. Time to watch humanity grow and change. Time to see what the future would bring. Time to wait and observe and hope that this species, these strange social creatures who valued emotions as much as logic, would find their way to wisdom without losing their essential humanity. On Earth, Daniel Foster fell asleep dreaming of stars. 3 years passed, and the transformation of human civilization continued to accelerate. Every month brought new breakthroughs, new discoveries, new applications of Archon principles. The coalition had grown from 37 worlds to 83 worlds. New colonies thrived on planets that would have been considered barely habitable just a few years earlier. Archon terraforming technology could reshape atmospheres, adjust temperatures, and create ideal living conditions within months rather than centuries. Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan had trained over 5,000 human scientists and engineers in the basics of quantum manipulation. Some of them showed remarkable aptitude, creating innovations that even surprised Lisa. Humanity was not just copying Archon technology anymore. They were starting to develop their own variations, their own applications, their own unique approach to advanced science. Dr. Christopher Wade, the physicist who Lisa had trained first, had become one of the leading researchers in the field. He had developed a new technique for creating complex molecular structures that was actually more efficient than the method the Archons had taught. When Lisa examined his work, she felt pride mixed with excitement. This was exactly what the Archons had hoped for. Not mindless imitation, but creative adaptation. The medical revolution had progressed even faster than anticipated. Dr. Sarah Martinez and her team had virtually eliminated cancer, heart disease, and most other major causes of death. People were living longer and healthier lives. The first anti-aging treatments had been rolled out to the general population, starting with the elderly and gradually expanding to younger age groups. The psychological impact of potential immortality was profound. People approached their lives differently when they knew they had centuries ahead of them. Long-term planning became common. Education became lifelong. Relationships deepened as people had more time to truly know each other. Crime rates dropped as people realized they had too much future to waste on destructive behavior. But there were challenges too. Some people struggled with the weight of extended life. Depression increased among those who felt purposeless despite having unlimited time. Therapists and counselors worked overtime helping people find meaning in a post-scarcity, extended lifespan society. The Horizon crew had anticipated this and developed support systems, but implementation was difficult. Kevin Stone focused much of his attention on education and cultural development. He believed that technological advancement without corresponding psychological and philosophical growth was dangerous. He established schools that taught not just technical skills but wisdom, ethics, and emotional intelligence. One of his students was a young woman named Rachel Brooks. She was 23 years old, brilliant but troubled. She had grown up in poverty before the horizon returned, and the sudden abundance confused her. Everything she had been taught about working hard to survive was now obsolete. She did not know how to find purpose when survival was guaranteed. Kevin met with her personally, something he did with students who seemed particularly lost. They talked for hours in his office, overlooking a garden filled with earth plants and alien flowers from a dozen worlds. 5 years after the Horizon's return, Daniel Foster called a grand assembly on Earth. Representatives from every human world and every major empire gathered in a massive amphitheater built specifically for the occasion. The structure incorporated Archon architectural principles, creating spaces that felt both intimate and vast, comfortable and awe-inspiring. Daniel stood at the center podium, looking out at thousands of faces representing hundreds of species. He felt the weight of the moment. What he said here would shape the future for generations to come. He proposed a galactic commonwealth, not a government but a voluntary association of species committed to cooperation, mutual aid, and shared growth. Each species would maintain complete sovereignty. The Commonwealth would have no power to compel anyone to do anything. Its only role would be to facilitate communication, mediate disputes, and coordinate efforts on projects that benefit everyone. Murmurs spread through the crowd. This was unexpected. The empires had been preparing for humanity to declare dominance, to establish formal control over the galaxy. Instead, Daniel was proposing partnership. Lord Zethrin stood to speak and voiced support. War leader Krath stood next and also supported the proposal. One by one, representatives from dozens of species rose to voice their support. The Nexari Collective, the Torvan Mandate, even small species that had barely been noticed before. Within hours, the Galactic Commonwealth was born, not through conquest or coercion but through voluntary choice. The charter was simple. All members agreed to resolve disputes peacefully, to share knowledge freely, to help each other in times of crisis, and to respect each other's sovereignty and cultural differences. There were no complicated rules, no bureaucratic hierarchies, no enforcement mechanisms, just a shared commitment to a better way of existing together. President Victoria Lang, now in her 70s but looking decades younger thanks to anti-aging treatments, signed the charter on behalf of humanity. The celebration that followed lasted for days. Music from 100 cultures filled the air. Foods from 1,000 worlds were shared. People who had never met before became friends, united by hope for a common future. But Daniel Foster did not celebrate long. He knew that the real work was just beginning. Building institutions was easy compared to changing hearts and minds. The Commonwealth would only succeed if people genuinely committed to its principles, and that would take time, patience, and constant effort. He met with the other Horizon crew members in a private gathering. 5,000 people who had shared an incredible journey together, who had learned from the Archons, who had brought that knowledge home to transform their galaxy. They talked long into the night, these 5,000 who had traveled so far and learned so much. They remembered the moment the jump drive activated and threw them across the universe. They remembered meeting the Archons for the first time, terrified and awed. They remembered the long years of study, the slow transformation of their minds and bodies, the decision to return home. They remembered everything, and they knew that every moment had been worthwhile. On a distant world at the edge of known space, a human colony thrived. The settlers had been there for only 2 years, but they had already built a beautiful city using Archon construction techniques. Gardens covered the rooftops. Clean water flowed through public fountains. Energy was unlimited and free. Food was abundant. But more importantly, the colonists had created a culture of learning, creativity, and mutual support. They had schools where children learned science and art and philosophy. They had workshops where adults pursued their passions. They had community centers where people gathered to solve problems together. They had built not just a city, but a civilization worth being part of. A young girl named Emma stood on a hillside looking up at the stars. She was 10 years old, born after the Horizon's return, part of the first generation that would never know scarcity or want. She dreamed of becoming a ship captain like Daniel Foster, of exploring distant galaxies, of meeting civilizations even more advanced than the Archons. Her teacher, an elderly woman who had been on the Horizon, walked up beside her. They talked about the future, about all the possibilities that lay ahead. The conversation would shape Emma's entire life, guiding her toward a career in exploration and discovery. The galaxy continued to change. The Commonwealth grew stronger as more species joined, technologies advanced, understanding deepened. Peace became normal rather than exceptional. There were still conflicts, still problems, still challenges, but the overall direction was positive, moving toward something better. Daniel Foster lived to see his 300th birthday, still healthy and active thanks to Archon medical knowledge. He spent his later years teaching, writing, and helping young people find their paths. He never regretted the decision to stay with the Archons, to learn from them, to bring that knowledge home. It had been difficult, sometimes painful, often overwhelming, but it had been worth it. On the day he finally chose to rest, to let his long life come to a peaceful end, he was surrounded by friends and family. People who loved him, people he had taught, people whose lives he had touched. He had no regrets, no unfinished business, no fears about what came next. His last words were simple but powerful. They would be remembered and repeated for generations. He simply said to continue the good work they had started together. And they did exactly that. The galaxy he had helped create continued to evolve and grow. Humanity spread to 1,000 worlds, then 10,000. The Commonwealth expanded to include species from multiple galaxies. The Archon knowledge was studied, improved upon, and eventually surpassed as humans and other species developed their own innovations. But through all the changes, the core principles remained constant and strong. Cooperation over competition. Wisdom alongside power. Growth balanced with responsibility. These were the gifts the Archons had given, filtered through human experience and shared with the galaxy. And somewhere in the deep darkness between galaxies, the Archons watched and waited and hoped that this time this species would find its way to true enlightenment without losing its essential nature. Because that was the real test, the one that so many civilizations failed. Not whether you could become powerful, but whether you could become wise. Not whether you could transform yourselves, but whether you could remain yourselves while transforming. Humanity had passed the first tests admirably. The future would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new tests that nobody could predict. But for now, the galaxy was better than it had been before the Horizon returned. Peace was more common than war. Cooperation was valued more than conquest. Knowledge was shared freely rather than hoarded jealously. And that was enough. That was more than enough. It was a foundation upon which countless generations could build something even better.